Well, we're getting around Christmas time, and like every other year, I'm going to go ahead and put out a few things that'll show you some reality to this situation. Probably everybody listening to this is very familiar with this depiction that's shown here, but what's strange about that depiction or the story that you hear of the Nativity is it's nowhere in the Bible. Let me correct that for you. It's never in the Bible in one place. You'd have to pick apart the different Gospels, stories of it, only a couple of which even contain the story at all. And in one story, there's people that are shepherds by night watching over, and an angel comes down and talks to them. Other ones that talks to Joseph and says, hey, it's okay, your wife's pregnant, not by you. I don't know who would be okay with that, but of course you'd have to be okay with it. If an angel came down, then you'd have that there's this great idea about it. A lot of people have had that as a conundrum in their mind too, but you know, if God showed up and said it was okay, then yeah, it's okay, of course, if that really happened. But looking at this nativity, this is supposed to be the virgin birth, and the reason we call it the nativity is that this God originally was supposed to have been out in the wild whenever she had the baby. She didn't quite make it. But due to the way that they have to construe things of him coming from Nazareth and all these different things, they've put it up to be something that we see that's like this, and it twists off to being right. They weren't able to go in and stay in the inn, but they were able to go next door and stay where all the animals were, and Jesus was born in a manger and everything. So this is the humble birth, and that's another one that we could go over very easily. But the thing that's real important, people seem to latch up onto real hard, is the virgin birth situation. And see, that makes him super divine. But see, he's not alone in the ancient world in the fact of God's having births with people. In fact, there are very many tales of other gods that get the same type of birth treatment, where a lady is impregnated by a god, and when she has the kid, there he is. One easily example that we know of is Alexander the Great, and how he is half divine. And it's said that he had one blue eye and one brown eye, and that was the signification of that. Also in that idea of signifying that these blue-eyed people were gods too of the time there, but that's just makes another connection. It's in other videos. But I've also made another video a couple of years ago here now about twins and divine twins, and how whenever people had twins, they didn't have a total understanding of what was going on then. So they thought, well, the man had made one of the twins with the lady, but God had made the other. Now, they could easily do this with non-identical twins, fraternal or whatever you want to call it. And so, because they look different. And then if you have twins, they may be two beautiful girls, but usually people can pick one out of the two of them that has a little more of the beauty, a little more of this, a little more of that. And that's usually one that was said that was divine. Kind of makes sense. Jesus, there's no story of a twin. There's only one person here and everything else. Well, strangely, later we have a guy show up named Thomas, and he's supposed to be the brother of Jesus, all right? Okay, so he's the brother, but that's not, okay. So after having these kids, she started pumping them out like crazy, didn't she? Well, let's just go with something different than that. The name Thomas itself means twin. In fact, you'll find it in the Bible as Thomas Didymus. And Didymus in the Aramaic also means twin. So they're saying twin all over this guy here. And who would he be the twin of? Well, he's the twin of Jesus. So there's this idea that's not in the Bible, you don't see, but it's in everything around there doing the same idea at this same time, where if somebody has twins, one of them must have been divine. I did video about that, so you can probably just go past that on and look it up. I don't know, look up Jesus twin and you'll be able to see that, and that video that goes along with it. But then here we have this idea of them being divine. that someone is able to pregnate her, much like this star that supposedly somehow floats over one point, not being out in space to where anybody from any direction would be going to this one point. Doesn't make any sense, and I've made other videos about that in past years too, showing you the idea of the Star of Bethlehem, the three wise men, and how they've connected them to buying pot, believe it or not. One of the people that supposedly are buying pot, they actually found a thing where these people are buying cannabis, this is pot, and they're buying it, and the guy's name on the sale is that same name. Yeah, it's a video I've got about it. It shows the three wise men in a bluish background with a star. But they get lost looking for him and stuff too, and have to talk to Herod and all this stuff. And that just gives that firstborn dead situation going on and things like that, you know. And so you have that idea there. There's this twin idea that's no longer there. But in the ancient world, did we ever have this virgin birth type thing? Well, amazingly, it doesn't even say that she had a virgin birth. This is almost like the Red Sea and the parting of the Red Sea situation, where if you go and look at the oldest text of it, it never said Red Sea, it said Yam Suf, which is the Sea of Reeds, not red. And so something a little bit different totally, and that changes the whole little parting of the sea in some incredible thing, and probably the most incredible thing that happens in the Bible, and actually tells you it didn't ever happen in a sea of reeds and it wasn't that big of a deal. So it starts deflating what God actually did, because you've been told in your mind and all this big great idea, and all, and he smites the staff on the ground and makes it part and does all these things and stuff. And then there's of course a question on whether he did it or God did it or these things, you know, and crazy, because right before then God was telling him to act like a god, even to say that he was a god, but he had a speech impediment, so Aaron had to speak for him. You know, this is kind of crazy. You can imagine some hair lip coming up trying to tell you he's God. So pretty strange there. But then we have this twins idea that we talked about before, and it's kind of left out of the idea. But do we have these virgin birth type situations? Or are these births where a god comes and impregnates a lady, it's not involved with a man, and so on like that, and it makes somebody who's a god or a demigod is what it actually is? Much like Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh was 2/3 divine because there was a divinity on his other side too, impartial, and then the other one was a divine creature. But we're not going to go with that, but it's the same thing. People try to say, oh, well, it's different. And the apologetic comes out real quick. Oh, well, over here, she was a virgin, and they don't say that or this stuff. Hilarious. The book doesn't say virgin, it just says she's a maiden. That's what that word means. And it's looked at nowadays by a lot of these scholars that are way beyond me, have turned around and said, you know, they say that in the earliest parts too, that she ended up getting together with a Roman. Before Joseph, she got with a Roman guy named Pantera. And Parthenos means virgin in Greek. And so whenever the Greeks transposed this situation off of it, it quickly, in a few times, somebody thought, boom. But also you can look at it as, oh, that sounds good, and they left it in. Right? But some of the most famous things that you see are from these same type of things, like Hercules. But there's a guy that most people probably haven't heard of named Apollonius of Tyana, and he's supposed to have been a divine birth. Now, not necessarily from a virgin, but then again, the goddess that he's supposed to be from recreates as a virgin every time, and she has a kid and she's still a virgin. So that could definitely have something to do with it, I guess you could say, and add that together. But also, he was known to have healed the sick and raised the dead and done all kinds of things. And it really looks just like Jesus. Only it's not. And he had the same type of thing. It's one apologetic slapper that you can say, well, I ain't got nobody like this. Actually, we do over on our side, but on your side, it doesn't even really mean virgin. But if we want to give you the most out of yours off of it, we've still got that tagged over here. It's nothing different than Gilgamesh, nothing different than Alexander the Great, than this man, Apollonius here that we're talking about of Tiara, and many more. I mean, you could take the idea of Mithras and his divine birth through a goddess and all this type stuff and try to blend it into that idea. But of course, Jesus is a blending of a few of these things. That's why they go, oh, it isn't an exact copy. It's not a 1974 Ford Fairlane. And you're like, look at this boxy car over here and tell me it's not formed in the same guise and it wasn't around the same time as all these people over here with their weird tail lights and their everything else. It fits right in with it. You're not going to be, oh, ours is so special a car. There are special cars, but that wasn't a god or anything like that. But so we have this concept here of a divine birth and whether that can be the virgin birth or anything, and it actually never says virgin. So it's strange to me also that this idea of the nativity you have to take and weave it between a couple of tales. It doesn't come across as straight. And actually, if you figure it out in truth, it never comes out to the story that we're told. Sounds kind of crazy, doesn't it? You'd think it'd be the one that would be the most, but no, it's not. And we have people in a modern day that know that Jesus wasn't born on the winter solstice. They're just doing that because of paganism and da-da-da. Well, he's supposed to be a sun god, and the sun dies and then reborn. So whenever he's born from that point, and he dies on Easter and everything. Oh, I can't see through that flip-flop. Oh, I'm just blind to the whole concept. No, it's just that easy, people. It's just that simple. You see a camel, there's that magic donkey, isn't it? You can see a cow and things like that there, and I guarantee you nobody, oh, if you think it's God, they probably wouldn't let those in loose of it. But we can also see that there are lambs there, and so we get that Aries concept and the divineness and the angels hovering above it, and then one of them's got a dove, and you're going to release it. Oh, that's just, what's the releasing dove things? That comes from Inanna. Yeah, it's a sacred creature, but it also has to do with death and rebirth things too, and how birds were able to eat the carcasses of people and then take it up into the sky in ancient times, and that kind of got woven out of that into something that we know of as angels. But let me tell you, they're nothing exclusive about angels. These winged creatures that are divine, that do all these things, are found all over. You can find Sumerian iconography of them like crazy, along with other people that are in Greece and all these other places that are and around the Fertile Crescent. It's not something that's special. In fact, what they did was they turned their old religion into something brand new and tried to make it special. I would say it's somewhat special. It's that kept people dumbfounded for 2,000 years. But it seems like people in general want something like that, or mythology to believe in. We've got enough that we can keep going with and everything, but because we've disrespected every single one of the other mythologies in lieu of this one, you really can't do that. So I wonder what religion will turn into in the next couple of hundred years, because the only thing that's keeping it alive is the people that are deep trenched into it will not look at what all of the scholarship has shown to proven that this really didn't ever happen and it's not what you think it is. Is it worth worshiping? Well, it's got a lot of good points in it and good things too, but it's got a lot of bad. And when humanity strived and got a lot more advanced, we can look back on this and say, you know, maybe we need to drift away from that. Well, that's what they were doing, drifting away from what the ancient Canaanites did. And I can guarantee you that happened before that, and the Natufians, and it folds and folds and folds and folds back through time. So it looks like we need a new religion. And knowing this fact here, it's going to destroy all the Abrahamic religions, regardless if they try to believe in it or not. If the one story is true and theirs is built off that book, and it's not true, then the other ones aren't either, is it? It's okay. It's okay that all this is just a mythology, just like all the other ones. That makes so much more sense than everybody made up these stories about these things happening that never happened, but then we had this one here, and it's all their stories wrapped into one, and it finally happened. Come on, people. That's past the point of it there. We could talk about the frankincense and myrrh and things like that, why would a baby need anything like that? But this was for his whole life. The wise men and how they came from the east when they try to show you different ethnicities and so on, and these people would have been the same ethnicities. But in this endeavor, they are involving magicians, for that's what the Magi mean, the three wise men. But in another tale, the three wise men are the three kings that you hear. We three kings of Orient are, well, they came from the east and other places that are known from there. So from Bethlehem, that would have been from Sumer and other places from over there. And perhaps even farther, where there were Caucasians that were at that time and well known. And we don't have to act all kid gloves about it like we do now. And act like we're not sure if Aryans had anything to do with India. Duh! Because that's played out with DNA and everything else, along with the wheel and all the animals and everything. And the story's there. And in fact, the Mahabharata does say that Indra is a blonde-haired man, like over 4 times for sure. Yeah, and so kind of odd there that it's thrown off in. But I've gone way off in left field now. Here we are. There's a chicken. There's donkeys. There's everybody there, and the three wise men are there, but the three wise men in the story aren't there. They show up later, much later. In fact, when they show up, Jesus is in a house. Well, then where'd the manger thing go? See, everything's a little different here and twisted around, and their stories locked together and twisted around too, where you're trying to wonder, well, did they go into the manger of the inn? Look, this place isn't attached to the building on the side, and we're not in the middle of a town. We're out in the nativity, nature. Well, other gods were born in a cave and all these other situations. Well, where do you get that from? Well, if you look at my series on Written in the Stars, there's a cave. And then there's who becomes baby Jesus. And there are these animals that are around it, some of which, like that donkey or that cow, like Aries the lamb. In fact, Jesus turns into Aries the lamb. Look into it, it's pretty cool. Also, I show you Jesus walking on water, the face of God, the house of God itself, my namesake Neptune, Poseidon, if you will, and where his abode was actually, and the abode of Enki, and you'll find these are, oh wow, it's the same thing. Yeah, and you can find flying horses and the stories that go all with the Iliad and the Odyssey and all of those things too, because it's written in the stars. That's where some of these tales come from. That's what direct them. Quite often in these tales, you have something weird that stands out and you're like, what? And they seem so sure of it. Why are they so sure of it? Because it's written in the stars. It's right there. That's the thing. That's the thing. That's the missing thing too that nobody ever gets it. Oh, like they're talking about a Star of Bethlehem and this thing and da-da-da. Well, yeah, they are. And it has a lot more to do with astrotheology than people in a modern day want to give credit for, but I guess that's for other videos. Merry Christmas to you and all and your family. I hope everything goes well with you during this time. And that you have fun. If you're really looking for something, you go ahead and get that real thing that you wanted for yourself. That you go out and take a ride around and look at Christmas lights. And if you see a nativity, you give it respect, because it's something that mankind's been behind for thousands of years, and perhaps even longer than that. And if you want to look at the idea of where it came from and down the pipe, this is many decades, many tens of thousands of years old in its essence, that came about to a point of something like this. Somewhere in there we got the idea that a kid was going to grow up, because nobody around here can do it, but some kid's going to grow up sometime and he's going to be great. Well, how could he be great? Well, he's divine, half divine by God, the good half of a twin set, something like this. It's a real common trope in ancient days, and it's right there in your Bible. I guess we don't have phases after that because people quit making up mythologies like that around that same time. There came a point. But that's for other videos. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Peace.